"Who's this guy?" he asked, already smirking. I was still holding the receipt. Still holding the receipt. I hadn't even finished saying the words, "Hey, I thought I'd bring you lunch." And there they were. Her mouth still slightly open from kissing him, still tilted toward his jaw. Her hand still resting on his leg like it belonged there. The same hand that wore the ring I gave her, back when I still believed that quiet love was enough. She looked at me like she didn't recognize me. Then she laughed. Laughed. And something inside me, something dull and soft and painfully loyal, just crumbled. She finally spoke. "Theo, seriously, you didn't need to come all the way here just to embarrass yourself." Her boyfriend, this bearded jerk in a tight white tee, leaned back like he owned the entire rooftop. "You're Theo? No offense, man, but she said you were more. I don't know." He gestured toward me with his fork, less nervous looking. My ears buzzed. My legs felt like they were made of packing foam. I couldn't think of anything to say. I don't know why I didn't throw the sandwich at them, or shout, or cry, or collapse. Instead, I placed the brown bag on their table like a delivery boy and said, "There's napkins inside." Then I walked back toward the elevator like a sleepwalker. I'm not proud of that. I should have done something. Anything. But I didn't. I pressed the elevator button with the tip of my thumb and stared at the blinking numbers, numb to everything around me, until I heard him say, behind me, not even bothering to whisper. "Poor guy probably rehearsed that lunch drop-off in the parking lot." They both laughed. Hard. That's when I stopped breathing. That's when the elevator door opened. And that's when I realized. They had no idea what was about to happen in exactly 9 minutes. None. I didn't go straight back to my car. I walked past it. Just kept going. I think I made it halfway around the block before I realized I was still gripping the elevator keycard in my fist like it owed me something. My palms were sweating through it, and my heartbeat felt like it had moved into my throat permanently. My body was shaking, not from rage, not yet, but from this horrible cocktail of shame, grief, and something else I still don't have a name for. I sat down on a cold bench outside an insurance office, one of those gray ones with chipped metal and bird poop dried on the corner. The wind picked up. My sandwich, the one I brought for myself, was still in my jacket pocket, untouched. I didn't even taste hunger. I just kept hearing his laugh echoing in my head. Over and over again, like someone left it playing on a loop. Poor guy probably rehearsed that lunch drop-off in the parking lot. I had actually rehearsed it. Practiced what I'd say. Wondered if she'd smile when she saw me. I imagined her coworkers teasing her, saying how sweet I was, how lucky she was to have a husband who still brought her food in the middle of the day. I thought maybe we'd kiss. Maybe she'd touch my hand like she used to. Instead, she touched his. And then mocked me like I was a confused guest at a party I was never invited to. I don't know what made me get up, but I suddenly had this pull, like something inside me whispered, "You're not done yet." And I wasn't. My legs moved before my brain caught up. I headed straight back to the building, but not to the rooftop. Not yet. I remembered something she once told me during a fight last year, a fight I thought we'd moved past. She said, "You don't pay attention. I could have another guy right in front of you, and you'd still be asking if I wanted sweet tea or lemonade." I remembered it because it was cruel, and now it was prophetic. But she was wrong about one thing. I did pay attention. I always have. Maybe too much. I remembered her telling me the cafe on the rooftop had 2 entrances, the elevator and a back stairwell employees used for smoke breaks. The door had a loose hinge. I remember because she complained about it once when she scuffed her heel. "This building has no class," she had muttered. So I used that door. It opened with the gentlest push, like even the air inside didn't want to disturb what was happening. I peeked through a narrow opening. They were still at the table, still laughing. He had his sunglasses resting on top of his head now, like some smug daytime actor pretending to be off the clock. She was sipping iced coffee through a straw, legs crossed like nothing in the world could touch her. She didn't look like the woman I married. She looked like someone who had rehearsed being heartless. And that's when I realized if I walked out there again, if I confronted her now, they'd win. Not because I wasn't angry, but because I still loved her enough to hesitate. And hesitation was weakness. But I had something stronger than rage. I had proof. I pulled my phone out and pressed play. The audio wasn't perfect, but the words were clear enough. I had recorded our last fight. I don't know why. Maybe part of me always knew we weren't on solid ground anymore. In the clip, she'd admitted something she probably thought I forgot. "I don't love you anymore." Her voice crackled through my earbuds. "I'm only still here because I don't want to deal with the paperwork." "You're easy." I clenched my jaw so hard I thought I chipped something. I paused the audio, opened my text app, and typed one sentence to her boss, who I had in my contacts from last year's holiday party. Might want to check the rooftop lounge. Kennedy's not exactly on her lunch break. Then I attached a photo I'd just taken from the stairwell window. Both of them mid-laugh. Sent. She was under contract with a luxury branding firm. Her boss, Colleen, was strict about company image, especially during business hours. Affairs weren't illegal, but blatant ones during work hours with clients or associates. That was a public relations nightmare. I slipped out the stairwell just as I saw her phone light up on the table. She picked it up, smiled, and then stopped. She looked at the screen, then at the man across from her. Her eyes widened. Just a little. Then her mouth opened slightly, not to speak, but like something sharp had been shoved between her ribs. He leaned over to peek at her phone. That was when both of their faces went pale. Colorless. Frozen. 9 minutes. That's how long it took from the time she laughed at me to the moment everything cracked wide open. But trust me, this wasn't the end. It was barely even the beginning. The worst part wasn't that they looked pale. The worst part was that they looked surprised. Like it had never occurred to either of them that I might do something, anything, beyond quietly fading into the background like some harmless extra in their romantic subplot. That look, that brief flicker of "oh no, he's not as soft as we thought," hit harder than the slap she gave me last year when I accidentally deleted her Pinterest board. I watched through the stairwell glass, still hidden, as Kennedy and her so-called boyfriend tried to piece together what just happened. She was whispering rapidly now, her hands darting around like she was swatting invisible bees. Her voice got high and sharp, not loud, but panicked. His smug expression vanished fast. He leaned in, reading whatever she was showing him on her phone, and I could practically hear his brain scrambling behind his eyes. Then she stood up abruptly, nearly knocking her drink onto the floor, and looked around the rooftop like she expected someone to leap out of the bushes with a clipboard and a pink slip. I knew that look. That was the look she gave when things weren't going her way and she couldn't control the narrative. And in that moment, I realized she was finally afraid of losing something. Not me, obviously, but her image, her job, her control. I left before they could spot me. I didn't want confrontation, not yet. Not while I was still shaking with that sickening combination of shame and adrenaline. I took the service stairs down to the lobby, moving like a ghost. I didn't even notice how tight I was gripping the railing until I reached the ground floor and saw the red lines pressed into my palm. I walked out of the building and straight past my car again. This time, I didn't stop at the bench. I just walked. For 3 blocks. Then 5. I ended up outside a laundromat that still had "We have Wi-Fi" painted in faded yellow letters on the window like it was 2009. I sat on the curb, turned my phone over in my hands, and did the thing I told myself I would never do. I opened her cloud account. She once made me memorize the password in case she ever lost her phone. I never used it. Never even looked at it. Until now. It was all there. Everything. Photos, voice notes, videos. Most of it was boring. Outfit selfies. Dumb quotes from podcasts. But then I found the folder called Tuesday Things. I clicked. First, it was receipts. Dinners I never knew about. Rideshare trips to addresses I didn't recognize. Then photos. Photos of her and him. Holding hands in parking garages. Sitting in the back of a cab. One of them asleep on our guest couch, the same couch she told me her cousin had crashed on last month when I was visiting my mom in Vermont. There was even one of them in my hoodie. My hoodie. I wasn't breathing. I scrolled faster, angrily now, until I hit a voice memo labeled for later. I played it. Her voice. Soft. Smug. I know I need to tell him eventually. But Theo's not built for this kind of honesty. He'll crumble. He always does. So I'm giving it time. I don't want him doing something dramatic. He's so delicate. Delicate. She said it like it was a slur. I closed the file and sat in silence for a long time, listening to the hum of the laundromat dryer spinning socks I didn't care about. I wasn't angry in the traditional way. Not the shouting, punching the wall kind of angry. No, this was deeper. More precise. Like a quiet storm that takes its time tearing through a town. I knew I had options. I could go to her boss. I could forward the photos. I could call her family, the ones who always told me I was too good for this city girl. But none of that felt complete. Not enough. Not yet. I needed her to understand what it felt like to be dismantled piece by piece. So I got up, wiped my hands on my jeans, and walked back to my car. This time I opened the door, sat down, and started typing a message. Not to her. Not to him. But to someone else entirely, someone she never thought would hear from me. And the moment I hit send, I knew there was no going back. Because I didn't just have evidence. I had her secret. The one even he didn't know yet. The person I messaged wasn't some private investigator or tech wizard or revenge hacker. It was much worse. It was Portia, the woman Kennedy once called a jealous Klingon with no boundaries. Portia, the guy's ex-girlfriend. The same guy who had just mocked me across a rooftop table and wore my hoodie like it was his trophy. I found her in a photo Kennedy had posted months ago, completely unaware she'd tagged the wrong account. The girl standing next to him, arm tied around his waist, had her own page. A quiet one. Mostly candles and books and yoga poses. But I scrolled back far enough to see their couple photos, and then the very abrupt stop. I had debated whether I should involve her. She didn't deserve to be yanked into this mess. But then again, neither did I. And I figured if anyone would understand the sting of betrayal, it'd be someone who'd been dropped for a woman who used her lunch breaks for makeout sessions. So I wrote, "Hi Portia. I know you don't know me, but I believe your ex, Carter, is currently involved with my wife. I have proof. I'm not reaching out to cause problems, just thought you deserved to know." Then I attached one photo. The rooftop one. Kennedy laughing, her hand on Carter's thigh. I stared at it for a second before hitting send, and when I did, I felt this strange wave of guilt, followed by a heavy sense of relief, like I had just released something I'd been holding in too long. I didn't expect a reply right away, but it came faster than I thought. "You're Theo, right?" I froze. My name wasn't in the message. I figured this day might come. "Can we talk? I've got something you need to see." The words barely processed before she followed up with an address. A quiet cafe across town. Neutral ground, she called it. I had no idea what she meant, but I agreed. The place was nearly empty when I arrived, just the clinking of spoons and soft indie music playing over too many plants. Portia was already sitting near the window, wearing a gray coat and no makeup. She looked exactly like someone who'd been hurt deeply, but managed to reassemble herself anyway. She didn't waste time with small talk. "Carter lied to me about your wife," she said calmly. "He said she was just a client, that she was helping him with branding for his startup." "Startup?" I asked, confused. Portia actually laughed, bitter, tight. "It's not a startup. He's broke. And your wife? She's been paying for his lifestyle. Clothes, rent, meals. Even the down payment on that dumb car he keeps flashing around. I found the wire transfers by accident when I was helping him file tax stuff. She sent him money labeled as marketing consulting. He never even had a website." I blinked. "Wait." "Kennedy gave him money. Thousands," she said. "And not just once. Over and over. She was funding him, Theo. That's why he left me. I couldn't compete with someone who wrote checks and called it love." I sat back in my chair, stomach twisting. All this time I thought Kennedy was just cheating. I didn't realize she was investing in her affair like it was a business partnership. Then Portia pulled out her phone and showed me a video. I didn't want to see it, but I watched anyway. Kennedy and Carter were in our guest bedroom. I recognized the paint on the walls. The blankets. The framed photo she never took down of her and her grandmother, a woman who would have slapped her if she saw this. The footage wasn't graphic. No nudity. But it was intimate in a way that crushed me. They were sitting close, whispering, laughing about me. "He still irons his socks," Kennedy joked. "You're serious?" Carter chuckled. "Swear to God. Like it makes him feel useful." I felt like I was watching two people peel off layers of me and turn them into punchlines. I closed my eyes. "Why did you show me this?" "Because," Portia said gently, "you're not the only one who thought they were being loved honestly." We sat there in silence for a while. Then I asked the question that had been haunting me since the rooftop. "Why now? Why didn't she just leave me?" Portia didn't answer for a moment. Then she said something I'll never forget. "Because people like Kennedy don't leave. They upgrade. And when that falls apart, they backtrack like nothing happened." She handed me a flash drive. "It's all on here," she said. "Messages, dates, transfers, voice notes. Use it however you want. Or don't. But just know she's not done taking from you." I left the cafe feeling like I was floating 2 inches above the sidewalk. I didn't go home. I drove aimlessly for over an hour, just trying to sort through everything. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Kennedy had mocked me, lied to me, used me, and now she was building a new life with my money, my home, my peace. But now, I had all the pieces she never thought I'd hold. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel powerless. I felt quietly dangerous. I waited until Friday. I needed time and not just to process, but to prepare. I didn't want to lash out in some messy emotional tantrum. That's what she expected. That's what Carter expected. They thought I was weak, soft, slow-moving, a man so emotionally stagnant I wouldn't notice the walls caving in until the ceiling fell on my head. They underestimated me. The flash drive Porsche gave me sat on my desk for 2 nights before I opened it. I think part of me wanted to preserve the illusion a little longer, like if I didn't double-click, there was still a version of this story where I was just overthinking things. But when I finally opened the files, it felt like lighting a fuse. There were emails from Kennedy's business account, casually discussing client dinners that lined up perfectly with photos of her at bars with Carter. Screenshots of hotel confirmations paid with our joint credit card. Voice notes she sent him where she talked about finally finding someone who wasn't boring and being stuck in a marriage that felt like wearing someone else's skin. I sat there for hours, cataloging every detail, cross-referencing dates, timestamps, lining it all up like an accountant of my own heartbreak. Then I found the most devastating part, an audio clip, less than a minute long, recorded sometime in February. In it, Kennedy was talking to someone, maybe one of her coworkers. She didn't know she was being recorded. She said, "Theo still thinks I'm coming home every night because I love him. He's like a dog that keeps waiting by the door even after you stop petting it." I didn't cry. I wish I had. But something inside me had moved past grief into numb calculation. It was like my brain finally detached the last wire connected to hope and switched fully into logic. So, Friday, I took the day off work, set my email status to offline. I spent the morning packing. Not my things, hers. I went through every drawer, every shelf, and carefully folded her clothes into boxes. I didn't rip anything. I didn't break anything. I didn't even touch the things she'd given me. I just removed her presence from every corner of the apartment. Her shoes, her perfumes, her scarves draped over chairs like decorations. Gone. The boxes went into the hallway. I didn't want her near the bedroom again. Then I disconnected her name from every shared account, streaming services, grocery apps, door lock access. I even replaced her fingerprint on the front door with mine. By noon, it was like she never lived there. And I left one thing, a white envelope, resting perfectly on the glass coffee table in the living room, the one she always made me clean with those weird streak-free wipes. Inside the envelope were 2 things, a single printed photo of her and Carter, mid-kiss, time-stamped, and a flash drive containing all the evidence Portia had given me. I didn't write a note. I didn't need to. If she saw that and still didn't understand, there was no point in spelling it out. Then I left. I didn't go far. I drove to a friend's apartment across town, someone she didn't know. I told him I needed one night on his couch. I didn't tell him why. He didn't ask. That night, I turned my phone off completely. I didn't want the calls, or the texts, or the excuses. I wanted her to sit in the silence and feel the full weight of it, the house stripped of her, the accounts locked, the evidence laid bare like a body at a crime scene. I wanted her to come home expecting to win the game, only to realize the board was flipped and the pieces were gone. I imagined it over and over, the click of her heels coming down the hallway, her hand on the knob, expecting normalcy, expecting me, and instead walking into a cold, hollow version of her life, one she could no longer control. I imagined the way she'd freeze when she saw the envelope, the stillness, the way her stomach would drop, and I hoped, in that moment, she finally felt small. Just once. The way I had. It was around 3 a.m. When I turned my phone back on, I stared at the screen as it sputtered to life, half expecting it to explode with notifications. And it did, kind of. 7 missed calls. 4 voicemails. 17 texts. All from Kennedy. The timestamps told their own story. First, the calls. Then short, angry texts. Then longer, confused ones. Finally, a voicemail that was so quiet I had to play it twice just to catch her voice through the static. "Theo, what the hell did you do?" Not "where are you?" Not "please talk to me." Just that. Flat and sharp, like she'd stubbed her toe and was blaming the floor. I didn't answer her. I didn't even listen to the other voicemails yet. I just tossed the phone onto the couch, laid back, and stared at the ceiling fan spinning above me like a slow drip faucet of judgment. My friend was passed out in the bedroom. Bless him. Unaware that the guy sleeping on his pullout was living through the kind of drama people usually exaggerate in country songs. The next morning I decided to go back. Not to talk to her. I just needed to see something. Anything. I needed to know what her face looked like when she stood in the ruins. So I parked a block away and walked up the alley beside the apartment. Our unit had thin walls and cheap windows. If you stood at the right spot, behind the old oak near the trash bins, you could hear everything from the living room. Arguments, TV, even the time she once sang Taylor Swift while cleaning. Now I stood there again, but the sound was different. Muffled pacing, drawers slamming, papers rustling, a scream, short, strangled, immediately followed by silence. Then came the crying. I didn't recognize it at first, not because it didn't sound like her, but because I'd never heard Kennedy cry like that, not for real. Not the mascara-smudged, breath-caught kind of crying that sounds like regret scraped raw. It wasn't beautiful. It wasn't performative. It was human. And I stood there, listening to her finally become real in the space I had left her, and I felt absolutely nothing. Then the front door opened, suddenly, violently. I ducked behind the tree just in time. She came out in sweats, hair a mess, clutching her phone like it was a life preserver. Her eyes were red, cheeks blotchy. She wasn't holding a purse. She didn't lock the door behind her. She just ran, literally ran, down the street, barefoot. I stayed frozen in place for a moment, then slowly walked toward the apartment. I shouldn't have, but curiosity got the better of me. I just wanted a glimpse. When I stepped inside, it was like walking into the aftermath of a storm that only targeted memories. Half of the living room was torn apart. The couch cushions flipped, cabinets open, drawers emptied. The white envelope I'd left was lying crumpled on the floor, torn at the corner like she'd tried to destroy it but couldn't finish. The flash drive was gone. Of course it was. But something else was sitting on the coffee table. Her wedding ring. She'd taken it off and placed it exactly where the envelope had been, perfectly centered. Like a placeholder. Like a trade. I should have felt something then. Rage. Sadness. Triumph. But I didn't. All I felt was tired. Not in a sleepy way, in a soul-heavy kind of way. The kind of tired that comes from finally seeing a truth you tried not to believe for too long. Then I heard a sound from the bedroom. I froze. I wasn't supposed to be there. She was gone, yes, but not for long, probably. And yet, something about the stillness in the air felt wrong. Off. Like a vacuum had swallowed the light. I walked slowly toward the hallway, opened the bedroom door, and there he was. Carter. Half asleep. Shirtless. Lying in the bed like he belonged there. Like the last 24 hours hadn't set his world on fire. My world on fire. He blinked when he saw me. Sat up. Dude, he said, rubbing his eyes. What are you doing here? I didn't answer. I just stared at him. Not because I was shocked to see him. I wasn't. I was shocked that he looked so calm. So completely unbothered by the earthquake he and Kennedy had detonated. You still had a key? He asked, stretching like this was normal. I wanted to hit him. More than I've ever wanted to hit anyone. But instead I said the calmest thing I've ever said in my life. You should probably leave before she finds out I saw you here. He blinked again, confused. She knows I'm here. No, I said, tilting my head. She thinks you left last night. She thinks you stayed away. And right now, she's running around this city, trying to put out fires she doesn't know you're about to make worse. He sat up straighter. What are you talking about? And then I said it. The sentence I'd been holding in since Portia handed me that flash drive. I sent the bank records to your ex's lawyer. I watched the blood drain from his face in real time. Slowly. Like a leak in a boat no one notices until they're waist deep. He didn't speak again. I turned around and walked out. And this time, I left the front door wide open. It took Kennedy 3 hours to realize what I had done. 3 hours between her sprinting out of the apartment barefoot and me watching Carter sit there with a hangover and no clue how close he was to losing everything. I hadn't even driven far, just circled the block and parked a few spaces down. I waited. Not because I needed to see more, but because I wasn't done watching her unravel. Not yet. When she finally returned, she looked like a completely different person. Hair sticking to her face. Shoes missing. Her phone clutched so tightly in her hand, I thought she might snap it in half. I saw her approach the building, see the open door, hesitate. She didn't even go inside right away. She stood there, breathing heavily, one foot just over the threshold like she was preparing for a bomb to go off. Then she stepped in. 2 minutes passed. Then 5. Then I heard it, yelling. Not words, just volume. Then crashing. A slammed door. Something made of glass shattered. I waited until the noise stopped. I waited until the silence that followed settled like fog over the street. And then I drove away. It wasn't about revenge anymore. Not really. Revenge implies rage, punishment, the desire to see someone hurt. What I felt now was colder than that, not satisfaction, but closure. Like I'd finally stopped trying to rebuild a house that had been hollowed out years ago by termites I chose not to see. By the next morning, Kennedy had messaged me 6 times. The first 3 were panicked. The next 2 sounded apologetic, manipulative, but soft. The last one simply said, "We need to talk before things go too far." Too far. She didn't mean the affair. She didn't mean the lies. She meant the consequences. I didn't reply. Instead, I drove out to my sister's place in Oregon. It was a long drive, but I needed the space. I told her everything. She cried harder than I did. She hugged me, told me I didn't deserve this, told me she'd always suspected Kennedy wasn't what she seemed. That was the hardest part, realizing that other people saw what I refused to. We stayed up late that night, drinking tea in her kitchen like 2 exhausted soldiers comparing wounds. She showed me old photos of our family, reminded me that I existed before Kennedy, that I could exist after her too, that I wasn't just what she left behind. While I was there, my lawyer called. He had seen the files I'd forwarded, the bank transfers, the messages, the photos, and he said words I never thought I'd hear. "You have enough for spousal fraud." I blinked. That's a thing. Financial deception in a marriage, especially with funds tied to joint accounts and under falsified descriptions, qualifies under your state's laws. With proof she misrepresented where the money was going, you have grounds for a serious case. I didn't respond right away. I just looked out the window at the trees beyond my sister's porch, wondering how many other people had ever found themselves in the exact center of a moment they never planned for, handed a kind of justice they didn't even know they were allowed to ask for. I told him to go ahead. Kennedy didn't respond to the court documents at first. She let them sit. Probably thought she could bluff her way through it, charm me with teary eyes and tired excuses. But then something changed. I don't know what. Maybe Carter finally saw the mess he was sitting in. Maybe Portia's lawyer followed through on his own threats. Or maybe Kennedy finally looked in the mirror and saw someone whose house of lies had no walls left. Because that Sunday, I got a letter. Not a text. Not an email. A real, handwritten letter, slid under my sister's door like a ghost had delivered it. It wasn't long. It wasn't even angry. It just said, "I don't know who I became, but I know you didn't deserve her. If I ever meant anything to you, please don't finish what you started. I've lost enough." I read it 3 times. Then I folded it back up and placed it in a drawer. Because the truth is, she hadn't lost enough. Not yet. And I wasn't the one finishing anything. I was just finally refusing to clean up her mess. It took a month before things settled. Not legally, that would drag on a bit longer. But emotionally, internally, the storm that had torn through my life finally ran out of fuel. And all that was left was this quiet, unfamiliar kind of peace. Not the kind that wraps around you like comfort, but the kind that sits beside you and says, "You made it out." The kind that doesn't feel exciting or dramatic, just real. Kennedy stopped calling. Her lawyer reached out instead, trying to negotiate, offering quiet settlements. No apologies. No acknowledgement. Just transactions. She wanted this to vanish from her record, her name, her world. But I didn't give her that. I didn't scream at her. I didn't curse her out. I just let the silence answer for me. And the silence, it turns out, was louder than anything I could have said. I heard through a mutual friend that Carter had ghosted her completely after the legal stuff started rolling in. That he moved 2 states away, claimed he never knew anything about the money being sent, tried to pin everything on her. It didn't stick. Portia's lawyer was smarter than him, and the screenshots proved it. Still, he vanished from her life just like he once appeared. Quiet. Quick. Cowardly. Funny. Really. He left her in the exact same way she once planned to leave me. As for Kennedy, she moved out of the city, changed jobs, deleted her social media. She tried to disappear from the mess. But the digital trail she left behind would never quite fade. You don't get to pretend something never happened just because you're tired of dealing with the fallout. Actions echo, and she finally had to live with the sound of hers. But this story isn't about her anymore. Because something strange happened once I stopped letting her occupy every corner of my mind. I started noticing things again. Small things. Good things. Like how coffee tastes better when no one's mocking the way you make it. Or how sleeping on one side of the bed isn't lonely, it's free. Or how laughter feels different when it's coming from you, not at you. I started running again. Not far, just enough to feel my lungs working. I changed the apartment layout. Repainted the walls. Got a dog. A rescue mutt with crooked ears and more loyalty in his wag than I'd seen in years. Named him Truman. He doesn't care about drama. He just wants to sit beside me and know he's safe. And I think maybe that's what I wanted all along, too. I even met someone. Not in the dramatic, rebound sort of way. It was gradual. Kind. She's a librarian, if you can believe it. Her name's Melody. The first time we talked, she asked me if I was lost, because I was standing in the travel section looking like a guy who had no map. She wasn't wrong. We didn't rush anything. We didn't try to fix each other. We just started showing up. And every time she smiled, it felt like maybe the world wasn't as sharp as it used to be. And one night, not long ago, she asked me what my ex-wife had been like. I thought I'd freeze. I thought the memories would choke me. But instead, I laughed, not bitter, not sarcastic. Just done. I told her. She taught me what I never want again. And for that, weirdly, I'm grateful. Melody just nodded. She didn't press. She didn't need to. Because I wasn't trapped in that old story anymore. I was finally living a new one. One where I wasn't the broken man with the sandwich in his hand. I was the man who walked away and kept walking.